Okay, we are live, and I forgot to plug my headphones in. Okay, y'all should be able to hear me a little bit better now with these headphones because the microphone is so much better. But welcome to the Mom and Baby Nutrition Support Group. My name is Alex Gardner. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian and a certified lactation consultant. And as you guys know, every week we go live right here inside the Facebook group to talk about topics that I get a lot of questions about. And provide you guys with some value so that you know that everything in this group is evidence-based and is coming from a trusted healthcare professional. So if you're live, feel free to put any questions in the chat that you might have. If you're watching the replay, comment any questions that you might have, or reach out to me personally, because today we're talking about poop, and we're all moms and dietitians, including myself. We talk about poop all the time. So one of the big concerns, well, not concerns, but I would say side effects of being pregnant is getting constipated, especially towards the second half, towards the end of pregnancy. But you could be constipated even if you're not pregnant. You can be constipated when you're trying to conceive, when you're postpartum, recently postpartum, or you're postpartum 5, 10, 15 years. Anytime in your life you can be constipated and it's no fun. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And let's talk a little bit about what some of the signs are. So, of course, if you only poop a few times a week, that's a sign of being constipated. We want to poop at least once a day. But not just the frequency of stool, but if it's hard and it looks like rabbit poop, and you know what I'm talking about, if it looks like rabbit poop, we got a problem. If you feel like you're straining when you go to the bathroom, or you've got abdominal pain, and not just because you've got a baby inside of you, but like you're crampy, and also if you're excessively gassy, these are all signs of constipation. But chances are you already know you're constipated, so you don't need to know the signs. What you're here for is the why and the how do we fix it. So there are several reasons why constipation is so much more common in pregnancy than when you're not pregnant. And one of those is progesterone. So progesterone is a hormone that your body makes extra of when you're pregnant. And so what progesterone does is it relaxes your muscles, and that includes your intestines, okay? Or your bowel or anything. It just relaxes, okay? And so if it's relaxed, you'd think that it would make you go to the bathroom more because everything is relaxed. But what happens is your intestines don't work as hard to contract, which is what squeezes the stool out. So if your muscles are relaxed, it's not going to squeeze, and you need to be able to squeeze. So that's one reason why when we're pregnant, especially in the later half, that we get constipated more often. So this also is because if you think about it, if we allow stool to stay in the intestines too long, it can get hard. And it's hard to absorb the moisture from around your body. And when it becomes hard and dried out, it's even harder to pass stool. So all bad news. Now, the second reason, and probably the most obvious, is that you have a baby growing inside of you. And so what happens is as your baby gets bigger, second half of pregnancy, your uterus is heavier. And because of that, it's putting extra weight and extra pressure on your bowel. And that can make it harder for stool to travel through the intestines. And, you know, your baby's in there kicking around, punching things, kicking things, doing the things that they want to do in there, which makes it a little more complicated as well. Third, which if you are on an iron supplement, you would realize this, but iron supplements can and usually do cause you to be constipated. Now, if you're taking an iron supplement because your doctor prescribed it, or you're low in iron, maybe you have anemia, maybe you just have a deficiency, it's really important that you continue to take that supplement. But there are some things that we can do to help with the constipation without you having to stop the iron supplement. So, dehydration. Now, this might be kind of obvious, but when we think about dehydration, what happens is when we're drinking enough water, your intestines are able to pull in water from the surroundings to help the stool move through the bowel. If you're dehydrated, the water is used in more important functions in your body. And so if you don't have adequate enough water, the stool going through your body is not the primary concern that your body wants to focus on. And so making sure we have enough water is going to help things flow. Now, in the same breath, maybe we're not having enough movement. So what I mean by movement is not run a marathon, okay? You don't have to run a marathon to get things going, but even taking a slight walk, even going to the mailbox and back can start to stimulate things and get your body going. Doing some prenatal yoga, taking a walk. You could go for a run if you want to, but I'm not saying you have to. But have you ever noticed, and if you're a runner, you do know this, when you start to run, you're like, oh my God, it's happening. I have to go to the bathroom. And you have to stop your run because you have to go to the bathroom. But that's because when your body is moving, things are moving. So that's one thing we can look at too. The final thing is not having enough fiber. And fiber is what we find in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, all that fun stuff. And what that does is it bulks the stool up, so it makes it easier to pass. Now, here's the caveat. If you increase your fiber, you have to also make sure you're drinking enough water. Because if you bulk the stool up, but you're dehydrated, it's not going to help anything. Okay, so you got to have both of those at the same time. So let's talk about what you can do. Well, first, like I said, fiber. So do you know how much fiber the average American eats per day? It's about 10 to 15 grams. But we need at least 30 grams of fiber a day, if not more. So like I said, where can we find this? We can find this in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, things like beans. We don't find high amounts of fiber in things like white bread or white pasta or fruit juice. And here's how I like to explain that. How you find, so let's take an orange versus orange juice. So we've all seen an orange. You cut into an orange, you take a slice out, and there's all this pulp in there. You eat it, and you actually have to chew it. That is the fiber. When you juice an orange, yes, there might be some pulp in there, but you don't have to chew orange juice. And so the fiber is taken out. And that fiber is so important in so many different reasons. But for our discussion tonight, it helps bulk the stool up and get things moving to keep you from being constipated. So that's how you know if something is extra fibrous. Okay, now what about water? Remember I said we need to drink a lot of water, but what does that mean? So if you're pregnant, you need to drink between 8 to 12 cups of water each day. I would say this is probably about 24 ounces. So if you had this, you need to drink at least 3 of these per day. And that can be hard to do. And it doesn't have to be water. It just needs to be fluid, okay? And if you're struggling with this, I have another training in the guide section on hydration hacks, on how to increase your fluid consumption that I highly, highly recommend you check out because it can help you with increasing that fluid intake. And then we talked about movement. So what do we mean by that? We don't mean go run a marathon. We just mean get some walking in, get some stretching in, go to your mailbox. If you want to run a marathon, by all means, go ahead and do that. That's not my cup of tea, but to each their own. And lastly, what you might not have thought of is your pooping position. So, what do I mean by the pooping position? Well, depending on where you grew up or the culture that you're from or where in the world you live, people have different styles of toilets. In America, we typically have what we call a Western toilet, or for us, it's just a toilet. It's up off the ground. You sit on it like you're sitting on a chair. Well, in some Eastern countries, the toilet is actually on the ground and you squat. And what that does is it's more of a natural position for the intestines, and you're not having to strain as much to pass your stool. And I am not affiliated with this at all, but I saw this thing called the squatty potty, and it's like a stool you put around the toilet, and you can put your feet on it, and it allows you to, like, this is going to be weird, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. It allows you to put your knees up like this, and so that you're kind of in that squatted position without actually like being on the ground, because it can be hard if you're 8 months pregnant and you're squatting on the floor to like be able to get back up. I can see how that can be problematic, but this helps you be in like the optimal position to help the stool flow as well. So make sure you're in the right pooping position. Now, one note that I would like to talk about here, I got asked the other week by a client, like, what over-the-counter laxative that I recommended for constipation. I don't recommend laxatives unless it is prescribed by your doctor, especially if you're pregnant. The reason is because laxatives can dehydrate you very, very quickly, okay? And what they do is they pull that water, they forcibly pull that water into the intestines to help the stool move. It can create an electrolyte imbalance, and if you're pregnant, that can be very problematic. So I really don't recommend laxatives unless your doctor prescribes them. But there is one food that is nature's laxative. And it's not that tasty, at least not to me, but it works, and it's prune juice. So if you're really struggling, and I've had several clients that have asked me about this, and I say, try some prune juice, and it works. It's a miracle, okay? It is a miracle. So what I recommend is if you increased your fiber, you increased your water, you got some movement in, you tried the squatting position, drink about 4 ounces of prune juice, or eat some prunes for that matter, and that can help things get moving. But that is what I have on constipation. Now, I know this is a big issue for some mamas because almost all mamas get constipated in the end of pregnancy. And like I said, even if you're not pregnant, hey, still happens, okay? And it's no shame to talk about it. So, mamas, I really hope you enjoyed today's training. I hope you found some value in it. You could get some great takeaways from it. I'd love to know what your number one takeaway is in the comments. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey. And if there's any way that I can help you, I'm more than happy to do so. So, mamas, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you all next week. Bye, guys.